Ticker names for ETFs have been getting more and more creative, more and more evocative, you could say. And to talk about it, here with me is Rachel Evans. She's Bloomberg ETF reporter who recently wrote about this. And the one that caught your eye, that I think would catch anyone's eye, is a new one from WisdomTree. The ticker is SHAG. It's very Austin Powers evocative here. But what exactly is this ETF?
Right, so SHAG certainly caught my eye, and I think caught a lot of other people's attention too. SHAG is the ticker name for a new ETF from WisdomTree Investments. The real name for the fund is the WisdomTree Barclays Enhanced Yield US Short-Term Aggregate Bond Fund.
Not quite as catchy.
Bit of a mouthful, yeah. So they've gone with SHAG as a kind of way to capture the imagination. Theoretically, it comes from short-term aggregates, but I think they knew what they were doing there.
Yeah, it seems like that's not an accident that you come up with a ticker like that. I mean, why do you come up with the ticker like that, especially when it seems sort of divorced from, it's not very descriptive of what the underlying ETF is. So why this motivation to come up with these?
Sure. So I think that the ETF market has become increasingly crowded in recent years. I mean, we now have 2,000 odd ETFs all competing for investors' attention. To really stand out amongst the crowd, you need a differentiating factor. Now, that could be a ridiculously smart strategy that no one else has come up with before. It could be a new country exposure, or you could try and get a little bit of interest from investors, kind of sort of the way that, you know, a shop storefront used to do in days gone by, with a kind of catchy name. And that's where something like SHAG, you know, really kind of steals a march on its competitors.
And so are there some others that have these kind of catchy names?
So I have a few favourites for sure. Yeah. There's one called MOO, M-O-O, which is a VanEck agribusiness ETF. That was one of the earlier tickers to really come out and catch people's imagination. That was 2007. Since then, we've had tickers including TAN, T-A-N, which is a solar energy ETF, and then HACK, which obviously caught a lot of people's attention when that launched in 2014 and was followed very quickly by, I believe it was a security breach at Sony Pictures that kind of managed to get a lot of assets flowing into that.
So with all of these catchy names, do they work? Does it give them an edge over similar ETFs, for example, that do the same thing but don't have a name that's quite as catchy?
So the evidence is fairly limited from an academic perspective, but if we look at, say, the solar energy industry for an example, you can compare TAN with KWAT, KWT. Both of those launched at a very similar time. TAN came out from Guggenheim, KWAT came out from VanEck. They launched within a week of one another, very similar fees, very similar holdings. Yet TAN has about 20 times the number of assets in it as KWAT. It seems that TAN was the one that caught people's imagination, thinking of the beach perhaps, rather than KWAT.